On March 16, 2026, the Armstrong Air and Space Museum sat down with United States Air Force pilot Les Schneider to discuss his involvement in the recovery of Gemini VIII astronauts Neil Armstrong and David Scott in the Pacific Ocean. Well, thank you, Les, for joining us today and to discuss your role in the Gemini VIII recovery. For the first question, what were some of your first thoughts and actions to learning about the Gemini VIII emergency?
Well, that's an interesting question because I was sitting in an alert check on Okinawa, Naha Air Base, standing by in case of an emergency, and we had no information at all that the emergency was ongoing. It was a shock when we got launched because nothing had happened in the space program up to this point, and we didn't expect anything. So I wasn't aware of what was going on at play. We were preparing our aircraft, getting ready to stand by, which we did at 7 o'clock in the morning that day. But the emergency was actually ongoing while we were getting ready to stand by. So we didn't really know anything about the emergency. And then we got launched.
All right. And based on your previous training for emergency scenarios, do you think that the recovery went as planned for this mission?
Well, let's start with the recovery wasn't planned. Nobody expected this to happen. And in all honesty, I was a bit of a neophyte in the rescue business. I'd only been in rescue for 5 months when this happened. I'd had only the basic training in this type of recovery. So a lot of the recovery was basically seat of the pants. It certainly went well, but it had to be seat of the pants at the time because nothing like this had ever happened before. No rescue or recovery like this had ever been done before. So even though I was prepared as far as the basics of dropping the pararescue men, for example, the recovery itself was moment by moment. I had to improvise a lot of what I did. Fortunately, for everyone concerned, it worked out well.
So, did you fully understand the extent of the emergency in space when recovering the astronauts? And if not, when did you learn the full story of the Gemini VIII emergency?
Well, the first part of the question, no, I didn't understand the nature of the emergency when we got launched. In fact, none of us on my crew really thought it was a legitimate launch. We thought it was just a practice. But all of a sudden, we're en route to a splashdown point, and we're getting all the information about the splashdown times and location. Well, it finally sunk in that this was for real. So, no, we didn't understand what had happened. We didn't understand the extent of it, but we realized all of a sudden that this was the real deal, and we were going to try to locate and recover Gemini VIII.
So when did you fully sort of understand the emergency afterwards, I guess?
It was days after. It was after we'd returned from the mission was complete. We were back at Naha Air Force Base. We were in our quarters, and eventually reporters came to interview us as a crew. And it was during this whole process that we were exposed to the details of the emergency. So it was days after the fact that we actually learned about it.
Yeah. And, you know, sometimes you talk about misconceptions of the mission. Are there any misconceptions from the recovery that you have heard or that you'd like to set straight, or something that you might want to let people know about?
Yes. Over the years, the biggest misconception is that I was flying a helicopter. I was flying a 4-engine old World War II fixed-wing airplane. And I know a lot of people have a hard time understanding how you can recover a capsule floating in the ocean with a fixed-wing airplane, you know. So the biggest misconception was that we were a helicopter. That's persisted over the years. I've even seen in recent months and weeks references to the helicopter recovery. There were no helicopters there. There were none available. The landing place, the contingency landing, was too far out at sea for a helicopter at that particular time. So the other misconceptions were that there were Navy frogmen that jumped to it. Well, they were Air Force pararescue men, right? Not Navy frogmen, however much respect I have for those guys. But that's another thing. The news media, in their attempt to cover all this, made a lot of mistakes along the way, just honest mistakes. But they even got my name wrong a lot of times. It was sort of amusing to read some of the accounts of this. But that's one of the reasons I speak frequently about Gemini 8, trying to set the story straight.
Great. And so looking back now, I mean, how important do you think Gemini 8 was for paving the way to landing on the moon 3 years later?
Crucial in a lot of different ways. Number one, the docking maneuver that they accomplished successfully before the emergency in space was essential to getting us to the moon. There were many docking maneuvers that had to occur going and coming back from the moon. So the docking maneuver was critical. So they showed that that could be done. It was done well. The fact that Neil was able to get that spacecraft under control under those dire circumstances was amazing. If Gemini 8 hadn't been successful, either the recovery in space or the recovery at sea, either one of those could have stopped the whole progress of the space program. And I seriously doubt that it would have progressed fast enough after that. It would have stalled out. And we would not have made Kennedy's hope and plan and desire that we made it to the moon in that decade. I don't think it would have happened.
So, based on your correspondence and what you've seen from Armstrong, what do you think about Neil's overall character as a person and as a astronaut?
Oh my. There was no better man and no better pilot than Neil Armstrong. He was humble, incredibly capable, simple in his way. He was dedicated, professional. I got to admit, he wasn't the friendliest person. Our relationship was, a professional occurrence, an event that sort of tied us together. I would never have called us friends, but he was always so cordial, pleasant whenever I spoke to him and when I met him. He was a unique pilot. If you go back through all his history, the things he did, the emergencies, even when he was practicing the LEM, and the LEM went out of control and he managed to get out of that LEM before the disaster happened and it crashed. Things like this, his speed of reaction. He was just such a talented individual, and so, like I said earlier, very humble. Didn't want publicity, didn't want anything for himself, really. He was dedicated to doing what was needed of him, what he was called upon to do. Very terribly unique, and I think probably the best choice for that first man on the moon.
Great, yes. And then what do you think people should take away from the lessons learned from Gemini 8, especially in regards to planned missions to the return to the moon, especially with the upcoming Artemis program?
Oh my, That's a rather large question. Um, Preparedness for any eventuality. Our technology today is so far beyond what it was with Gemini. It's even amazing to think of where the technology was when they managed to do the Gemini 8 program and up to leading to the moon. But our technology is incredible today. Nevertheless, you can never assume it's all going to go right, that everything's going to work right, that you're going to have backup plans. You're going to have the awareness that not everything is going to go right at all. And there could be some significant problems down the road. Hopefully we'll overcome anything that comes along. We've certainly got the dedication and the motivation to reach that goal, and I think we will.
And you've been a pilot for several decades now, many.
Many decades.
So over the years, what do you think is your favorite aircraft to fly?
Oh my. Well, just like the Gemini 8 recovery was a unique moment in my life. Flying that old World War II type DC-4 has a special place in my heart. And, I'd never flown anything reciprocating before they put me in this on Guam those 5 months before Gemini 8. I'd never flown a reciprocating airplane ever. I'd always flown jets and prop jets. So it was unique. It was, when you think of the history of aviation, going back to the early days and what the pilots faced, the type of airplanes they have to fly, I sort of made a connection with that era, flying that DC-4 I only flew it for 8 months actually total. And that connected me with the earlier history of aviation. So for that reason, it's always going to be the number one, place in my heart as far as aviation is concerned.
Great, yeah. And I guess, is there anything else you'd like to say or add to the interview?
Only one thing. For whatever reason, because of the type of man he was, because of our unique rendezvous. Matter of fact, in one letter he sent me, he called the Gemini 8 recovery the most unique rendezvous in the history of aviation, between a Gemini 8 capsule and an old relic of a World War II airplane. I kept in touch with him over many years, and when he passed away, I felt it deeply. He was a unique man. He was an incredible pilot, astronaut, a human being. It was a great loss. He's gone too early. I'll always feel that deep connection with him, with the space program in general. And I'm happy to have been involved in it.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.